I've never really been the kind of person who goes all out for birthdays. Some people love the idea of throwing huge parties, renting out spaces, inviting dozens of people, and making their birthday the event of the year. That's never been me. I've always preferred something smaller, quieter, and more personal. My close friends know this about me, so most of the time I'll just do something low-key like dinner with family, maybe hanging out with a couple of friends afterward. No balloons, no decorations, no big countdown. Just another day with a little extra reason to get together. But there's one birthday that will always stand out in my memory. Not because of gifts or cake or a party, but because of something that happened that night. I'd gone to dinner with my family earlier in the evening. When I got back, 3 of my closest friends, Jay, Carl, and Joey, texted me, asking if I wanted to keep the night going. We were 19 then, so bars weren't an option, and none of us had fake IDs. But they didn't want my birthday to end with just dinner. They wanted to do something fun, a little reckless, something we'd remember. That's when Jay, who owned a Jeep, suggested off-roading. There was a massive state park about half an hour from us, with long trails winding through deep woods. Jay had taken his Jeep there before, and while the paths were technically for hiking, he swore they were wide enough for his car. He also said the park was completely empty at night, no rangers, no cops, so it was the perfect place to hang out without anyone telling us to leave. It was July, so the summer sun didn't set until around 9. Right around then, we all piled into Jay's Jeep. Carl brought weed, Joey carried a handle of vodka, and the plan was simple. Head into the woods, hotbox the Jeep, blast music, drink, and celebrate away from everyone. Jay stayed sober since he was driving, but he didn't mind the rest of us partying. When we arrived, the main entrance was blocked with cones, but like Jay said, it was easy to move one and slip through. The drive-in felt eerie, narrow roads swallowed by trees. Eventually, it opened into a wide empty lot bordered by forest on 3 sides and baseball fields on the other. The silence felt heavy, almost unnatural, but we shrugged it off. Jay guided us to a trail, checked for cops, then flicked on his brights and drove in. Branches scraped against the sides of the Jeep, rocks and dips jolted us around, and we laughed like kids on a roller coaster. After a while, Carl lit up a joint, Joey poured drinks, and we were far enough in that the only light came from the headlights. Eventually, Jay killed the engine. Suddenly, we were in complete blackness. Crickets and the thumping bass from our speaker were the only sounds. We passed the bottle, smoked, and relaxed until we all froze. Over the music we heard something, high-pitched, sharp, almost like a scream. The Jeep went dead silent. Jay shut off the music. All of us whispered, "Did you hear that?" The headlights flicked on, but the path was empty. After a long pause, we laughed nervously, saying it had to be a fox. We drove further down, stopped again, and tried to relax. The tension eased a little when my friends sang me a horribly off-key happy birthday. Not long after, I stepped out to pee. Halfway through, I froze. Footsteps, slow, heavy, deliberate. My heart raced. I cut it short, bolted back to the Jeep, and blurted out what I'd heard. Jay flicked the lights on, and that's when we saw her. A woman in a hoodie stood 10 feet in front of us. Hood pulled low, face hidden, body perfectly still. Jay rolled down his window, asking if she was okay. She didn't answer. Slowly, she backed into the woods and vanished. We sat in stunned silence until Carl pointed, his voice shaking. "Guys, we're surrounded." Sure enough, 3 or 4 other hooded figures stood just beyond the tree line, unmoving, watching. In July's heat, they were bundled in dark hoodies. No words, no movement, just staring. Then Carl screamed again. Behind the Jeep, a man stood inches from the back windshield, his blank face glowing red in the taillights. "Go," I shouted. Jay slammed the Jeep into drive and tore down the trail. The ride was brutal, the Jeep bouncing violently, but he didn't slow once. No one spoke until we finally burst out of the woods onto pavement. The relief was overwhelming. Jay declared we were going straight home. The rest of us sat in silence, shaken and trying to process what we'd seen. We told ourselves maybe it was just other young people messing around, but the way they stood there, silently watching, and the one so close behind us, it didn't feel normal. And the scream we'd heard earlier? Looking back, I'm convinced it wasn't an animal at all. We never went off-roading there again. I'll never forget my little sister's 5th birthday, but it isn't because of happy memories. It was supposed to be one of those magical days kids dream about, with everything themed and exciting. My mum had booked a tea room that specialised in princess parties, complete with tiaras, dresses, and pink decorations everywhere. My sister was thrilled. She loved every second of it. But for me, at almost 12 years old and trying hard to act like a tough 6th grader, the whole setup felt embarrassing. I didn't want to join the activities or interact with the princess characters. I was worried about looking childish, so I slipped into the hallway, sat in a chair, and pulled out my Nintendo DS. That's when a woman I didn't recognize approached me. She smiled and asked, "Hey, you're Gloria's kid, right?" Gloria is my mum's name, so I nodded. She introduced herself as Aunt Sarah and said I probably didn't remember her because it had been so long since we'd seen each other. She chatted about how much I'd grown and asked about school. My family is big, and I'd had plenty of conversations like this with relatives who knew me, though I couldn't recall them, so I didn't question it. After some small talk, Sarah told me she had brought a big present for my sister, a dollhouse, and it was too heavy for her alone. She asked if I'd help carry it in. To make it sound better, she added that she also had an extra cake, and I could have the first slice. At almost 12, I knew about stranger danger. Teachers and parents drilled us on tricks predators use, and deep down, I recognized how close this was to those warnings. But because she said she was family, because she was a woman, and because she was so casual, I ignored my gut and agreed. I followed her out the back door, and instantly something felt off. A car waited there, engine running. A man sat behind the wheel. Sarah noticed my hesitation and quickly said, "That's your Uncle Dennis." She urged me to hurry before the frosting melted, but my stomach turned. Why hadn't she asked this Uncle Dennis to help with the dollhouse? Why leave the car running? Why park by the back door instead of in the lot? The questions piled up and my instincts screamed at me. I stopped walking. Sarah's friendly voice vanished. She grew sharp and commanding, ordering me to come help. She grabbed my sleeve, trying to pull me toward the car. I swatted her hand away and yelled for her to stop. Her face darkened with fury. For a moment, I thought Dennis would step out. My heart pounded so hard I couldn't think. But then, from inside the tea room, I heard my mum and my real aunt calling my name, their voices cutting through everything. Sarah bolted for the car. Dennis hit the gas, and they sped away. I rushed back inside, shaking, and met my mum and aunt halfway through the door. I blurted out what happened. My mum hugged me tight, apologizing, while my aunt ran to alert the staff. The tea room immediately went into lockdown. Workers gathered the kids, counted heads, and made sure no one else was missing. Thankfully, everyone was safe. But the thought of how close I'd come to disappearing still makes me shiver. The police came and took my statement. I told them everything I remembered about Sarah, Dennis, and the car. They promised to follow up, but we never heard anything again. No names, no arrests. As far as we know, Sarah and Dennis, if those were even their names, were never caught. What still haunts me is how she knew my mum's name. That detail made the whole thing feel personal, as if they had specifically targeted us. I don't know if they were strangers who had done research, or if they somehow knew my family. I try not to dwell on it. Instead, I'm grateful I trusted my instincts in that moment. If I had ignored my gut and stepped closer to that car, I don't know what would have happened, and that's why I'll never forget my sister's 5th birthday, for reasons far darker than anyone should. My uncle is well off and owns a house on the water with a huge backyard and pool. For my 21st birthday, since he was out of town, he let me use the backyard to throw a party. I wanted to go big, so I invited all my friends and told them to bring their own beer and invite whoever they wanted. The party started around 8. My uncle had an outdoor surround sound system, so I hooked up my phone and played a mix. I told everyone to stay out of the house, unless they were using the bathroom. Still, the yard quickly filled. Friends showed up with more friends, and strangers came through the gate in groups. Soon there were over 80 people, and I started worrying about cleanup and damage. I tried keeping watch on the doors, but as the birthday guy, I got distracted. Eventually neighbors called the cops, and police came to shut us down. Everyone left, except for about 10 people. That number dropped until it was just me and my buddy Rob. My uncle had told me no one could sleep over, but Rob was blackout drunk, so I figured he could just crash on the couch. I walked him inside, locked the gates and back door, then came in to find him already sprawled on the couch, groaning whenever I asked if he was awake. I left him there, checked the bathroom, then headed upstairs. My uncle's house was massive, with a foyer, staircases, and more bedrooms than he used. I brushed my teeth with my finger and passed out. About an hour later, I woke up nauseous and ran to puke. Walking back to bed, I heard footsteps below in the foyer. I leaned over the balcony and called, "Rob?" A figure stood in the dark, frozen, looking up. My stomach dropped when I realized Rob was still snoring in the living room. I asked who it was, pretending maybe it was a drunk party guest, but got no reply. More footsteps came from the kitchen. My heart pounded. I said out loud that I was going back to sleep, then hurried to my room, locked the door, and called 911. I remembered Rob and tried his phone. Someone picked up, but all I heard was breathing. I hung up and whispered to the operator while the doorknob to my room twisted and a light knock came. I asked if I should announce I was on the phone with police. He said no, stay quiet. As for Rob, he hesitated, then told me to wait. If they thought Rob was asleep, maybe they'd leave him alone. I sat there in the dark, clutching the phone, listening for footsteps. Finally, the operator said officers had arrived. They got in through the back door, which the intruders had left open. Only then did I go downstairs. I woke Rob and explained everything to the police. He was still too drunk to understand. We searched the house together. Nothing seemed missing, but it wasn't really my place, so I couldn't be sure. My uncle's bedroom was locked, and there weren't valuables left lying around. The police cleared the house and said they'd keep a car on the block overnight. I didn't tell my uncle right away, but later he asked where his Cartier watch was. It had been taken from a kitchen drawer. I had no choice but to explain. He wasn't furious, but he was disappointed, and he never let me host another party there again. Honestly, I couldn't blame him.